Today we're going to be learning about solving percent problems using proportions. I'm going to instruct you on this video and you're going to take notes on your notes page. When we do these, we use an equation that is a proportion. X over 100 equals is over of. X is the percentage that will go over 100. Is going to be the part. Of is going to be the whole. And we're also going to use X for any unknown. You can think of it like this. X over 100 equals is part of the whole. Is the part, of is the whole. Let's read our first problem. Fill in the blanks, and now we are going to be solving for the part. 25% of 40 is what number? Well, when you hear a percent, it automatically goes over 100. 25 over 100 of 40. Do you see how of and 40 is kind of connected? That means 40 goes on the bottom. Is what number? That means we don't know the is. Now watch closely because some magic is about to happen. We have to do 100 times x, that's 100x. 40 times 25, that's 1,000, because you know 25 times 4 is 100. So 25 times 40 would be another 0. Now this side has to equal this side, making a one-step equation. 100x equals 1,000. You might have forgotten this part. We've only done it a few times, but every time we do it in class, I stress the importance. We have to divide both sides so that we get x by itself. Divide both sides by the 100 that is with x, so that will cancel out and x will be by itself. We don't care what 100x equals, we want to know what just x by itself equals. And 1,000 divided by 100 is 10. And that's our answer. That means the is 10. So like a 10 out of 40 on a quiz would be a 25%. That's what that's saying. Okay, let's try another. Second one. 90% of 20 is what number? Well, did you hear a percent? 90%. So that 90 goes here. It's always over 100. That 100 is always going to stay. Of 20, see how the of is kind of connected to the 20? Is what number? We don't know the is. Again, we're going to do 100 times x. That's 100x. 20 times 90. That's 1,800. I'm going to write down here this time. I'm running out of room over there. 100x has to equal 1,800. Now, if I can divide both sides by 100, I get the x by itself. X equals 18. That means an 18 out of 20, like on a test, would be a 90%, which is true. Okay, let's try the third one. And these are all where you're solving for the part. So they're all going to be like this, where we know the percent. What we don't know is the part. We know the percent is 60 over 100. 60% of 150 is what number? Okay, so the of is connected to the 150. Is what number? We don't know the is, and that's why we put an x in the spot for the is, or the part. Then we multiply 100 times x equals 100x. I'll do it up here as well. And 150 times 60. Ooh, I'll have to solve that. I don't know that one. Put a 0 here, and I can move on to 6 times 0 is 0. 6 times 5 is 30. 6 times 1 is 6, plus 3 is 9. That's 9,000. So 100x equals 9,000. Divide both sides by 100. X equals, you can cross off a 0 on top, a 0 on the bottom, a 0 on top, a 0 on the bottom. And when the bottom is 1, you're done, and that's 90. So that means 90 out of 150 would be 60%. Like if 60% of the DePaul team brought back their Miller Gold packet or their pennies for patients that we're about to start, that would be 90 out of 150, which is a little more than we have on our team. All right, let's turn that over to the back. And this time we're going to solve for the whole. I think that green's going to be hard to see. I'm going back to blue. All right, so now we're going to know the percent, 75%. Put that over 100. The percent automatically goes over 100. Of what number? Now we don't know the of. We'll put the X on the bottom. Is 48. See how the 48 is kind of connected to the is? Okay, so now we have to do this times this. That's 4,800. This times this, that's 75x. So there's our equation, 75x equals 4,800. Divide both sides by 75 so that x can be by itself. Now 4,800 divided by 75, I'm going to have to work that one out because I do not know. Well, let's see that. I know 7 would go into 48. Probably 6 times, because 6 times 7 is 42. And that ends up being 450. When you get a little bit farther along, I'll let you use your calculators, and then you'll be really excited. And then 75 goes into 300. Well, that's 4 times. You might not know it, but I do. So that's 64. So x equals 64. Very good. So that means that 48 out of 64 would be a 75%, like on a test or a quiz. All right, let's try the next one. 5%. So that means 5 goes here over 100. Of what number? We don't know the of. Is 10. We do know that the is 10. We can do this times this. That's 5x. 100 times 10 is 1,000. And so 5x must equal 1,000. Divide both sides by 5. And so x equals 200. Because 5 goes into 10 twice, so then add 2 more zeros for these guys. All right, let's try the last one. 160% of what number is 32? Well, now this is more than one whole. So that's more than 100%. So it's going to be 160 over 100. Of what number? We don't know the of. Is 32. The is 32. 100 times 32 is 3,200. 160 times x is 160x. Ooh, I see something that you probably don't see. 160x equals 3,200. Do you know that 16 goes into 32? That's going to help us. Those cancel. X equals Well, let me show you. So I know that 16 times 2 is 32, which means 160 times 2 would be 320. Okay, bring down a 0, and I know it has to have another place because there's another place for it to go over, so I have to have something in this spot here. That means x equals 20. So 32 over 20 would be 160. 32 would be 160% of 20. This one's a little weird to try to understand. Okay, pause this video and try now to solve these three at the bottom by yourself. You should have paused until you solved all of those. Now we're going to see what you should have gotten, and we're going to do it together. 40%, 40 over 100 of 80, that means the 80 goes on the bottom, is what number? That means we don't know the is. Our equation will be 100 times x, that's 100x, equals 80 times 40, that equals 3,200. Divide both sides by 100. You have more room than I do probably. Maybe it's a little squished. X equals 32. That means 32 out of 80 would be a 40%. 25%, that's 25 out of 100, of what number? We don't know the of, is 12. We do know the is, it's 12. 25 times x means 25x. 12 times 100 equals 1200. Divide both sides by 25. That you probably had to solve on the side. I'm going to just do it. I've already solved these. That's 48. That means 12 out of 48 is 25%, which makes sense. That's 1/4 it would reduce. 60%, so that means 60 out of 100 of 150. 150 goes on the bottom. Is what number? We don't know that part. We always have to have one unknown. 100 times x is 100x. 60 times 150 ends up being 9,000. Divide both sides by 100. 0 zeros. That means that x equals, you got it, 90. Show your notes to your sub.